Welcome to Talk Design Podcast, the space where creativity meets conversation. I'm Adrian Ramsey, your host, and as someone deeply entrenched in the world of design, I'm thrilled to introduce you to the minds that inspire me in the hope that they will spark something special within you too. From a design past crafting women's swimwear to pushing the boundaries of performance sportswear, from mountaineering to international yachting, to implementing systematic innovation solutions that transcend boundaries in aerospace industry. My heart remains rooted in architecture, and exploring the emotional tapestry woven by built spaces is my fascination. My journey in design has been what can only be described as a life of design. I want to thank you for lending me your ears. I'm eager to embark on this next episode together. And for those of you who prefer to watch and listen, you can catch this episode at YouTube. That's youtube.com/@Talk Design Podcast. My guest today on Talk Design is Tom Kundig from Olson Kundig Architects. And Tom, it's a great pleasure to have you here. Now, I could give you the long intro, but a lot of people already know who you are. If they don't, Google is their friend. Get on the Google machine, look him up. You'll find out plenty. Look up the practice, Olson Kundig. It's phenomenal. His work's phenomenal. It has such a fit with nature and such a fit with simplicity, and gizmos is a word I'm going to throw in there, but you'll have to look that up if you don't know to see. Tom, welcome to Talk Design. It's such an honor to talk to you.
Well, thank you, Adrian. And it's a real honor to talk to you. I love these conversations, frankly. These are the things that kind of keep me always energized to think about.
Do you know, I have a similar thing. I'll jump out of here and go running upstairs and go, I'm charged for the week. It's always the same, always the same. I'm going to hit you with a few questions. One is going to be, I know your own home you call the Hot Rod House, and I want to sort of segue past that, and I want to segue to Speed Week in Utah, Bonneville Salt Flats. What's the magic that makes that special to you? What is it that things like that do?
We could spend the entire podcast just talking about what happens. Well, it's circling back to my youth, actually. And we talked a little bit about me, with a dad that was an architect, and actually I did not want to be an architect. I was actually a lot more intrigued with the artists that I was hanging around. I knew I wasn't an artist, but I really appreciated that culture. Well, of course, artists and architects, there's sort of an elitism.
Synergy. Yeah.
Well, and there's this highbrow sort of nature of it. And I remember the artists that I did a lot of sculpture. I wasn't a sculptor, and I was not really particularly crafty with the tools, but I was pretty good at working. So Harold had me work on the sculptures, and I just remember saying I forgot what it was, and I asked him where he got his inspiration or something like that. He goes, "God, you know what? Some of the best work out there is in a hot rod." And I was a car guy. As a little kid, I just loved hot rods. And I go, but I thought hot rods were lowbrow, and you're a highbrow architect. He goes, he said, that's such ridiculous talk. He said, they're artists, because they're artists just like any artist. What they do is a hot rodder goes and finds a thing or imagines a thing, and then they repurpose it in their own sort of way of thinking, especially the ones that do their own work, rather than contracted.
They're renovators.
Absolutely. And they're doing it. And what they're doing is they're taking the ordinary and they're making it extraordinary. And he said, that's what an artist is all about. And I thought, well, okay. So it kind of gave me permission to appreciate hot rods, and verbally, rather than just thinking and not saying anything, because you weren't supposed to talk about that sort of lowbrow art. And of course that's super unfortunate, because we could carry on quite a while and talk about the difference between the two, and I don't even know what the real difference is. I know what I like, whether it's fine art, whatever might be.
There's a rawness and innovation that seems to happen in hot rodding.
On all levels. And if you go to Speed Week, Well, first of all, you're seeing that rawness and that innovation just emerge, because these are people that are taking ordinary things and making them go very, very fast. And there's a lot of danger involved, and there's a lot of innovation involved. And immediately, the other thing that's really important, I think the reason I really appreciated being around artists was they were the people that actually meant something to a culture, because even I couldn't articulate it as a kid. They were the misfits. They were the outliers. They were the ones that were sort of poking culture, and uncomfortably, they were taking real personal risks.
Big risks.
Yeah.
Street racing and just everything, and home welded machines, and nobody stress tests it. Nobody stress tests it until you're doing 100 miles an hour.
Well, okay. So a lot of art is not life and death, but artists do the same thing.
They do.
They poke culture, and they really are, I think, critical to the evolution of a culture. So I just saw it as a totally fascinating place, and so I still, to this day, when I can go, I love going to Speed Week. I love sort of seeing that character, that sort of high risk taking character, making things and doing things, and how they think about the world.
And they're beyond common sense. They're impassioned, that, and the common sense would tell you, like, why would you spend 200 grand on a bucket of bolts when you could go and buy a really good car for that money and probably go as fast? But it's not about that. When I liken it to architecture, it's the same thing. If you don't love it, like, stupidly, then don't go there.
Don't go there. You'll be frustrated. I don't know if you saw it, Adrian, but one of my lead-in lines on the first book I did, where the hot rod house is actually one of the chapters.
I'm not sure.
It was a quote, and we don't even know who came up with it, but we love it. And we would use it in mountain climbing situations when things were really not going well, and you were almost kind of like ramping up to a sort of an uncomfortable thing. And so we'd always sort of bring ourselves back to almost a humorous place, but we would say to each other this quote, and we don't remember where we got it, but the quote is, "Only common things happen when common sense prevails."
Oh, isn't that great?
Which
it's so true.
And I have it. Yeah, I have it on my bulletin board here, and I'll always, when I get really in a awkward situation, I'll just think about that quote.
I love it. Only common things happen. I'm writing it down. When common sense prevails.
Yeah, I wish I knew who came up with it.
If we find out, we'll share it. It just brings it back to what makes sense. It's like,
and we were talking earlier about people that really had impacts on different industries. We were talking a little bit about Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
People that really, Steve came from a calligraphy background,
fine arts, an arts kind of background,
arts background, and sometimes people will ask me, well, how did it work? Well, how did you get to what you're doing? Why are you doing gizmos? Why are you experimenting? And I don't know, but there is maybe there's an impulse that we all share as creatives to go out and go to the, outside the usual, to explore in a sense, to find the end of the road or find a different direction and a different way of thinking about things. And if you do that, and like Steve, if you all of a sudden discover something and you're out there in the blue ocean, you're all by yourself, everybody is way back here, and they're thinking, what's that person doing way out there? And by the time everybody swims out to you, you're already in another place.
And the growth that you get to get that far out in front of yourself.
Oh my goodness.
That's the key as well, because I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, well, who do you have to be that, to get that, to go where you've got to be? Where's the growth that you're going to take?
I just recently I'm reading a book called Into Thin Hair, which is a book by a mentor mountain climber when I was growing up in Spokane. And he mentioned a quote, and I'm going to misquote this, but it was the idea I thought was really great. I think it was Lionel Trey said, "You will only go as far as your will." And I thought that was kind of interesting, that those people that have the will to do the first descent of these peaks and take high risks. And honestly, I understood it immediately when I read it, because I knew that my career in the mountains was I would say shorter, because my will only took me so far before I knew, oh man. And yet there were others that could go to those higher,
that can keep pushing
levels.
I was really,
absolutely,
like that I worked with Sir Edmund Hillary quite a bit.
Oh my goodness.
And
well, there you go.
In the fashion trade. And so he lived not far from me, and he was older when I was working with him, obviously. And I would quite often, pop around his house and present some stuff to him and talk to him about things. And of course, look, this sounds wrong, but I couldn't care less about the fashion stuff we were doing or the clothing we were doing. I could, but that was easy. What I wanted was the stories, and I wanted to engage, be with the person. And at every corporate dinner that he'd be invited to, I'd always be sat next to him as well, because we had such an easy rapport. And he was, I think, one of the most determined human beings and deliberate human beings. Yep. And he was telling me when he was doing the Ferguson tractor thing down to the Antarctic, he said, it wasn't my gig. It wasn't, I wasn't in charge. He said it was whoever was in charge of it. And he said, but we split and we did this thing. And he said, I could clearly hear on the radio being told to stop, but I couldn't clearly hear it in my head enough to stop. And he said, that's why we got there first.
It's so true on all levels. It's absolutely true. And, as an architect and as a designer, that we get to meet all these people that are just extraordinary. They have that extraordinary will and I think a lot of us also have a certain percentage of that will.
Absolutely.
But sometimes we really run into these characters where you just recognize, oh my goodness,
It fascinates me, because when you say that thing with that, like it's as far as your will take you. That's, for me, it's been a journey of my life. I'm dyslexic. I left school when I was like 18 or 17 or 18. I think when they kicked me out, I went and worked in pretty much. I went and worked. I wanted to be an architect then, and of course I couldn't get into university. I had no show. I think I got 51% for math or something like that. There was no way I was going to go to university. Art, I got like 98% or something.
Exactly.
But, that was the easy part. And then I went and I ended up deciding various things, but ended up in the clothing industry and ended up running globally the division of a big New Zealand company and setting up, design headquarters in Europe and all these kinds of things. And then I was sick of being on a plane my whole life. And I went, well, you know what? Yeah. And I've always been flipping houses and doing stuff like that. And I went, I reckon I'm going to make this design thing work in the housing market. That's going to be my new gig. So I reinvented myself into that. And the podcast came out of me going, I want to talk to people who really inspire me that would normally be not possible to talk to. People like yourself that I go, been inspired by your work for many years, and there's some magic there that I just keep coming. Obviously, lots of people do, but keep coming back to. And when I was talking to Michael Pincus, I said to Michael, he said about how you'd done his offices, and I was like, no way. Can you hook me up? And he's like, I can try for sure.
Yeah,
man.
well, of course.
And of course, he is a design.
Yeah.
He's caught in the fact that he's not designing like you are every day. That would be his joy, would be just to be sitting with a pen and a pencil and
But he was but talk about a fantastic client, because
awesome.
Here I get a phone call from this guy. Well, the whole STEAM thing, and of course I went to Long Island City, and God, I could just tell this is going to be a fantastic person to work with, because he's that kind of relentless, because I don't think most of the company was really totally on board with maybe some of his thinking. And frankly, those are the clients you just want to work for, that have that sort of will to go beyond the ordinary and get into the extraordinary. And We'll say here around the office that we're really not interested in the projects in many ways as we are in the clients, because they're the ones that really lead to the next level. We worked with Nike on a project, and there's a huge company, and you just immediately realized what an extraordinary company that company is, and the people that founded it and led it.
Yeah, like Phil Knight, and
but it was just knowing that culture and engaging that culture, that extraordinary culture. And again, we've been so lucky with so many of our projects to engage a terrific client. And honestly, I will say, Adrian, it's virtually impossible, at least for me, virtually impossible to do a good building without a terrific client. I mean, I need that kind of
the tension and the conversation and the agreement and the disagreement and the joy of the journey. The joy of the journey, right.
Well, somebody once said that, and I thought it was terrific. I think it might have been Donlan Linden said that the building is only the physical manifestation of a bunch of people's activity, and it's just the remnant. It's like,
it's what's left over from all this effort.
From all this thing, and it's just like this is the remnant. This is the
God, I love that as well. That's so. It is so just down the line. I interviewed a guy called Jeffrey Dungan who does some beautiful traditional sort of work in Alabama, and I said to him something about, you must get some nice projects, or something like that, and he says something like, I'm not so interested in the projects. In the projects. It's about people. When I find I might have been great projects, I'd said, and he said, I'm not so interested in great projects. What I'm interested in is finding great people, because with great people come great projects.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
And you'd go, I literally took the old head off and put the new head on the day he said it, and just went, it was the biggest mind shift, because I've always, in my business, I've always gone, great project, this would be a great project.
Yeah.
Screw the project. And then you get down to doing things like, small budget, like the cabin type things. And it's not just about big, it's about that journey and the tension of that journey. And then you get to create, as a mastermind of people, you get to create a piece of magic.
Well, I completely agree. Completely. And Michael, again, Pincus is a perfect example of that kind of personality. You just feel honored to be engaged with somebody with that kind of will and that kind of vision.
He's so cool. Such a cool guy. We actually just dropped his podcast yesterday, I think it was, or the day before.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we just put it out. And it just he's got such a love of design and a love of how great design works for people. We've got some more questions. With hot rodding, go back to the hot rodding, and you call your own home the hot rod house. So many architects need a platform to play, and so their own homes become the platform to play. And it's like hot rodding, but you're doing it with a structure. It doesn't necessarily have wheels, but it's not mobile, but it does everything else.
Yeah. Well, and then it actually turned out that it was when I started working on I had actually in the distant past bought a beautiful little bungalow, California bungalow. It looked like a Berkeley bungalow in Seattle, and I was restoring it, and I realized that I was missing something. I was restoring something that was already beautiful, and I said to my wife, I said, I think it'd be interesting to work with something really ugly, really a mess. Not just, because if it's already beautiful, absolutely restore it, but work with something that maybe somebody would throw away. Now, I've now recently written some few articles and had some interviews about ugly buildings and how interesting an ugly building is to repurpose. And that's, she found this house. It was really bad news.
So she was on board with you.
Yeah.
What a fabulous wife.
And it was
because otherwise she'd be living in the little bungalow in Berkeley and you'd be living in the hot rod house.
Well, yeah. and on all levels. And so I didn't start out calling it a hot rod house, but I realized that what I was doing was trying to turn something that was less than ordinary into something extraordinary. And to your point, it was like a hot rod where you basically are building something out of hopefully extraordinary out of the ordinary, and you're always working on it. Now, that I haven't really done much on it in the last 10 years, largely because my hot rods have basically turned into a lot of projects.
Yeah.
And, just kind of consumed by that. So I'm kind of lucky. Again, I'm in an industry where I can take that impulse, the hot rod things, for my clients.
Well, you now are more likely not necessarily to find a client at Speed Week, but you're going to find one that's going to have the same joy of, partly because of being published and all the rest, and well known for what you do, but you're attracting people who want what you give, and
want an adventure. And incidentally, Adrian, there's a really good chance I'm not going to find a client at Speed Week.
No.
That's not. Let's just be clear. That's not a marketing strategy.
No,
exactly. But you're absolutely right. It's just exactly what Harold said about lowbrow art or highbrow art. I don't care. I'm just looking for something that is extraordinary, and they're doing extraordinary stuff. And it's the same. It's just it's like a different language or something. It's the same spirit, though.
Yeah, it's the same spirit. That's the key. It's that person carries the same spirit, the same energy, and they are looking for the adventure. It's just in which way they can take it, and where their financial ability allows them to do it. And you look at Steve Jobs, or look at even Elon Musk. They're mavericks.
You go. Yeah.
They're on an adventure. They're on their own boy's own.
Totally.
And they're just looking for people to come on the ride with them.
Yep. And you used a word I think that's really important, and I'll use that word about careers, my career. It's an adventure. Yeah. I mean, I am so lucky to be on all these adventures. They take me around the world. They take me into different people, take me into different cultures. It's an adventure. It's like somebody pinch me.
Yeah, cool. Because otherwise you could have just been doing bus stops somewhere.
Yeah.
Like you look at the thing, and we were talking earlier about, architecture being a discipline. And when we were talking, you were saying about, if you don't love it, don't do it. And I remember an interview with Matt Damon that I was watching, and people say to him, I want to be an actor. And he goes, don't do it. Like, you're mad. Just don't do it. Don't even consider it.
Run away.
Yeah, run away. And the reason is because unless you cannot hear me say that and you're determined, if that's enough to stop you, then it's the best advice you've ever got. If it's enough to stop you, thank God I saved you 20 years of misery, because otherwise your passion won't get you there. But that thing of how, because of the 3D digital world and gaming and just the difference in how we function, how that an architect these days could be somebody that doesn't necessarily ever build or design a building as such that's to be lived in, or still be fit for purpose, because it might be in a video game, or it might be
absolutely
in some other form. So tell me a bit about that, how that's changed and what you see, because you've got a few hundred people out there. Behind that wall, there's a few hundred people working away.
Well, hopefully.
Yeah, are they still there?
I don't know what the percentage is anymore, but even when I was a kid, just graduating from college, the percentage of architectural graduates that actually were architects for their entire life was remarkably low. I mean, it was like less than a quarter. And it just indicated that you came through this education of becoming an architect, and for whatever reason, you had a sort of a basis to go in all sorts of directions. It's like being an attorney or something.
Yeah, right. You could end up in corporate finance or corporate this or whatever. Yeah, it's not necessarily I'm going to be a lawyer doing house settlements or...
That's exactly right. You could go into construction. You could go into construction law. You can go into graphics. You can go in fact, a lot of the shoe designers, well, that's an overstatement. A lot of the designers at Nike have an architecture background. And I mean, it just sort of makes sense. And So I knew that, maybe 30, 40 years ago. But now more recently, what I've been hearing, and this should be backed up by an academic that really knows the real
we'll get
number.
Some listener who knows it and they can tell us.
It'd be terrific. But what I'm hearing is a lot of kids now are being hired into Pixar or gaming, augmented reality, virtual reality, because you're sort of trained. You're trained technically and you're trained visually and poetically. I mean, you're an artist, or, applied art.
Applied artist.
So a lot of these technology founders that I've worked for, they'll say the same thing that Steve Jobs would always say. I want to work with architects. I want to work with the people that can think at this functional and poetic level, like Steve. I mean, with his background and where he went and what he did.
It certainly opens the scope for, I've heard architecture described before as the lowest paid profession. And I think a lot of people, everything needs designing. Like industrial design is one of the most amazing things in the world because everything needs designing and it lives and dies on how well it's designed. And we as people function in it on how well it's, or in it or with it on how well it's designed, how seamless it is. And it probably opens a scope of a whole new marketplace that never existed before, where they're never trying to actually make a building that's going to sit on the side of a hill. They can control all the incoming, the weather is controlled. It's inside my computer. Everything can be controlled, and then you can create these virtual worlds. I think it's fascinating. And I noticed the number of kids. I've got, my eldest is 18, a number of kids who will say, I can build that in Minecraft. So they'll say to me, come and have a look at this house I'm doing in Minecraft, or this building I'm doing in Minecraft. And I'm like, and they'll show me what they're building. And they're using all the same thought patterns of construction, and not so much like structurally, but putting things in new places and seeing what works and how the flow works and all those kinds of things. It's
exactly right.
It's fascinating.
That's exactly right. Well, in fact, I'll sometimes say, and this is probably an overstatement, but I do think it's kind of interesting. I some friends that are composers, and about 10 years ago, of course, even though I played a musical instrument and I could read sheet music, I really was never a musician, and certainly never a composer. And it was interesting always talking to them. They could look at a sheet of music and they heard the music. They could just imagine the music. I was more linear, okay, whatever. And
this one's this key, this one's this.
But they could look at it and hear the music, and I realized that kind of it's what an architect does to what you're describing, because it's interesting. I work in floor plans because I'm more old school, come from that tradition.
So when you say you work in floor plans, what do you mean? You start with your floor plan.
Oh yeah, I think floor plans, but I'm thinking three-dimensionally as I'm doing the floor plan. As you get more skilled, that's what you're doing. You're thinking plan, section, elevation. You're thinking of it so every move you make, a horizontal move, you're thinking, what's happening above.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden I realized that basically our drawings are, in a sense, sheet music for a musician, just like a composer does sheet music for a musician that's performed. Our drawings are performed by again, exaggeration, but it's still performed by somebody else to assemble into. But we've already heard it, if that makes sense.
Oh, and 100%.
Because because I can actually, I've said this before, that it's not exactly music, but it feels like music, good music, when I am looking at a floor plan that works in all aspects. It's like a sensation. You just know it's right, and it's like reading sheet music.
When you think of that, and you think of, say, a band, most bands probably, if they're lucky, have a few hit songs, and most architects and probably lucky if they have a few hit buildings, and that's when a whole lot of factors fall into line. Doesn't mean all the rest of their work isn't great as well. It's just not got all the harmonious factors. But when you say you work in floor plan, I've never heard anybody say that before. I do the same. I start with a floor plan because I can see it standing up. I don't need to, I can see what's happening, as opposed to, I've got friends who are architects who draw the massing of it first.
Yeah.
I look at that and I go, where's the kitchen?
Yeah. And how's the flow work?
Yeah. The light's coming from here, and where's the bedroom? Do they like the morning sun or do they like the afternoon sun? Like I'm going, hold on a second. I can't conceptualize it as I'm just trying to look at the mass going, where the hell is everything?
Right.
As opposed to starting with a floor plan and then going, okay, that will all work with the environment and with the people and everything else that's going to come into it, because I'm always seeing it standing up regardless.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so and it doesn't mean that the floor plan is actually the poetry. It's just your tool to understand how the skeleton works, because you're basically building almost literally kind of coming out of the dirt with this idea, and you're shaping it as it's coming out of the. So sometimes when you start with the big shape, you don't know what's like form follows function, right?
Yeah.
So you have to understand the function in a way, or at least understand how the component pieces are fitting together. Unless, gosh, you're working at another dimension that I don't understand. I'm much more simple, where I have to build in a sense from the ground up. Or from the sky down, but it's not as a fully conceived blob that I understand completely, a shaped blob.
Yeah, I think of oh God, his name, the guy who did the Oculus, Carvecchio Santiago, or I haven't got his name right there, but he did the Oculus in New York there, and his what's
Calatrava.
Calatrava, that's it. Sorry, he would be the other side of that, I think. I think he probably goes, I'm going to create this shape, and then everything from this shape's I'll make everything fit into the shape, and I'll make the shape work for it. But I think he probably starts with the shape, the mass, and the beauty of the shape.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear I bet he wouldn't totally say he starts with a shape, but I might say I want it to function, because he's a pretty amazing engineer and how he can kind of bring these things together.
Yeah,
he's probably imagining, I'm dealing with these forces or this situation, and in that case, maybe because you're dealing with fewer context issues.
Yeah.
You can kind of imagine it as a structure, like a bridge structure, or a piece of sculpture. Yeah, it's a different way. It's definitely a different way of thinking, because at the end of the day, architecture is a place, or building architecture is a place for people. We have a certain size, we have a certain sort of,
mass
capacity.
As a human being, and and capacity.
Yeah, and how we move, and what we, where our eyeballs are, And so we have a kind of a sense of us as a species, and you're trying to make these places that are comfortable and functional, and work on thousands of different levels, from a macro planning, wayfinding level to just what does it feel like to touch and move this thing on a very personal level.
Yeah, totally. And as you say, on a very, very personal level, it's in a way, it's no different from industrial design, except that you're in it as opposed to necessarily outside of it and observing it, or using it in your hand. You embody it, and that gives the person the greatest sense of joy or ease or excitement along the way. With that excitement piece, I'm going to segue to gizmos, and I get the hot rodding, and I get in your background, sort of in that whole growing up where there was all the production of stuff, and it was raw production. It's like it wasn't made to be beautiful; it was made to be functional. And
it was pretty destructive, actually.
Horribly so.
Yeah, the lumber industry, and of course the mining industry of southern British Columbia and northern Idaho.
Yeah,
pretty rough.
Pretty rough on the environment and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but that has a real depth in your love of gizmos, and I call them gizmos, but the fabulous parts in the buildings where the steel's raw and it's still elegant, but it functions, it does something, it opens something, it generally opens something, but it's mechanical, and it's what Obviously, now you attract clients who want that as well, because it's part of the signature. How much of it gets driven from what part? Like you see something and you go, can I just make that all slide away, or can I just make that tilt up, or can I just fold that up? Or
you're touching on a really good point, Adrian, because at the end of the day, what you don't want the gizmo thing is to just be this sort of trite thing.
Yeah.
You just going to do just to do, because really at the end of the day, they're just ways of solving sort of large issues that our ancestors have been solving for years. And that's, how do you make, big things into little things so we can actually carry them? Because at the end of the day, we're actually kind of weak as a being.
Yeah.
So, but we were kind of, what's the word I'm looking at? Crafty or
intuitive or ingenious.
Yeah,
we work out ways, levers and pulleys and carrying things on skateboards and
just clever stuff. And, we take the hydraulics of water, we take the nature of gravity, and we take the lever and the wedge and and we're kind of clever about using these things. And actually what they are, if you really think about these devices that are not motorized by motors or engines, but that they are just literally using gravity and physics.
Counterbalance and physics and gravity. Yeah.
It's an extension of your body. And I've always been totally fascinated with that, as how do you make a machine that's basically taking your weak little arm or leg and extending it to just move these big things. And I think that's just something I'm fascinated with. And a lot of the clients, they love it also, because it kind of takes your breath away a little bit when you saw the little video of the little girl, Savannah. I think she was 7 years old, and she's basically lifting 6.5 tons of glass and steel.
Yeah.
When she's rolling up, and that's not rocket science, but it is science, and thank goodness we're working with a brilliant man, Phil Turner, who I think he's in his mid 80s now. He's still working and still excited about everything he's thinking about working with us.
He has the same passion for it.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. He's like a little kid. He just gets excited about it. He gets a little frustrated with the youngsters like myself. But
you kids.
But he's but he really is fantastic, and he has this way of thinking about these issues that, maybe. I come to him and I say, hey, I want to do this because I think we can do this just based on my background. Well, he actually did. Somebody has to take it at that really nuanced, smart level to make it a fully functioning, simple machine. And he's really brilliant. And again, it's just stunning that, you just wiggle this little wheel and
wind this little handle and
and this thing lifts up.
The thing with it is that keeping it simple is harder than making it complex.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I saw his brilliance early on, because I kind of come from the same place. How do you, there's not my term, but a lot of people, there's a term out there. What would a farmer do? Given, and that's a really good way of solving a problem. Oh, okay, we've got a problem here. Or you're farming, you're not interested. You got to farm. So how do you solve this problem simply and hopefully elegantly? And I think that's the way Phil works. And I saw it immediately.
There's an absolute joy, I think, at any level for anybody. Some people might not like the rawness of structure like that, but there's an absolute joy of what seemingly is doing the impossible with the possible.
I completely agree.
It's like the cantilever,
Yeah.
It's how do you make this big chunk of this stay in midair, or appear to at least? And there's a joy in that journey, and people even say subconsciously it tells them a story. I was doing a talk recently. I had a photograph from an architect in Australia, in Melbourne, and it was a thin slab that's elevated just slightly off the ground. And then the building is just a box. It's just a big square concrete box. And it's got one arch that opens the whole thing. And I was likening it to, this was about the aesthetics of joy, about how it's cave-like, how it's got the security and the safety of the weight and all the rest. But the magic was the landscape that came up to it, where it was kind of just all random path and broken and grass growing in and out of, and unlandscaped but beautifully curated. But the fact that the building, there's all this weight, felt like it wasn't touching the ground really.
It's fantastic.
And then you go, that's a piece of genius. Really, you drew a flat line, a curved line, and a square box. But execution-wise, just beyond, and you love that.
And probably everybody that sees that is somehow thrilled. And why are they thrilled? And I don't know if I know totally the answer, but recently I was interviewed for an article on the Stahl House, which is Case House 22 by Pierre Koenig. And, that's that famous, photograph that.
I'll need to look it up.
I got a mental block on. I can't believe it. And I'm so sorry I missed. That's one of the downsides of getting older. But
I'll edit
it's going to drive me nuts. But it's a fantastic. It's probably one of the most famous photographs of architecture. And I was asked, why do you think this is so beloved? And I used to think, because I was a mountain climber, I would say, it's because it's about risk. It's about thrilling risk. And now I don't think that's true. I think it's about optimism. Okay. It's like I can go again from the ordinary to the extraordinary, and that's a lot of risk. Is all about optimism, because you're trying. You're not risking it for failure. There you go.
Yeah.
The photographer, come on, because of the nest. It's just driving me nuts. And just got
Slim Adams.
Nope.
No, I should be able to find it here. Maybe it'll come to us.
Yeah, it'll come to me in a second. I just can't believe I'm blanking on it right now. But it's this. I just think it's that thin edge where all of a sudden where thrill happens, and I think thrill is about optimism, because you're looking for success, not for failure.
Yeah, thrill is about optimism.
Totally.
Being optimistic and gives you hope, and then having that hope actually drives you into the gratitude and going forward. And then when we get thrilled by something, it's usually when we've sort of got hold of our own thoughts around it, or our own piece of that. I think if you do something that's thrilling, and it's just about always a growth situation of some sort for you. You kind of lift up from it.
I totally agree. It's Julius Schulman.
Right, Julius Schulman.
I'm embarrassed. I had an opportunity to meet Schulman in LA probably about 7 or 8 years ago, just like a year before he passed away, and I just still kick myself
for not doing
that. It didn't happen, and because
you must get to because of your own notoriety, you must get to meet some amazing people that cross your path.
Unbelievably lucky.
Yeah, exactly. It's a joy for part of your life, where you get to suddenly meet people that.
Well, again, it's back to the client. It's about the client. Yeah. It's not about the project.
So I've got a last question, which is going to be: if tomorrow they said to you, Tom, this is it, man, you've got one last project, you can't ever design another thing, you can't do anything else. The project doesn't even have to be architecture. It could be anything that you choose, but this is it. This is the final thing. After that, you hang in your hat. And what would you do?
Okay, I'm not going to answer your question. It's like the unfinished symphony. I would say no project. So there's no end. So I'm not going to do anything.
Exactly. Okay, fine.
No, it's been, and I'm almost sort of serious about that. You don't want it to end, and you want to leave on almost unfinished kind of
unfinished business.
Unfinished business, because I think if you honestly, the creatives that I'm around in the office, it's always about the next job, next. It's because everything you're doing is in a way unfinished.
It's exciting as well. I think with that, where it's that unfinished business, it's like when people say, well, when would you retire? And I go, Why would you retire?
Why would you?
This is so thrilling.
Exactly. Exactly.
I can't imagine. I can imagine doing other things as well and taking more time to do other things, but why would you retire? Like,
no, not when you're doing what we're privileged to do. I mean, there's so many adventures, and that's why, again, if kids will ask me, I want to be an architect, just like you, I'll go, that's great. You're going to be on an adventure you just cannot believe. I can't imagine a better profession than to be a designer, an architect, industrial designer, whatever, because if you love this, man, you will be leading a life you just can't believe. An adventure.
Yeah.
You just can't believe.
I think that's such a key word, is that adventure, because it's all about we'll say the client, but the people. You get to step into a part of their adventure. Yeah. And while that's really humbling, because it's not your adventure, but your adventure gets to go on their adventure with them.
Totally agree.
It's just like I know when we'll take on new clients and stuff, I go, I'm waiting at the door, with my tail wagging for my walk to see where the adventure's really going to go. I think I know where it's going to go, but the actual piece of it is going. It's like, oh, here we go, and then what will we discover? What will we unwrap?
Who knows?
Yeah. That's the joy of this journey. It's
totally. It's the risk also.
I've got one last question. Best ski fields that you love in America?
Best ski field?
Yeah. Where do you love to ski, and where would it be?
Well, that's so super dangerous because I work in all the resorts, and I'll get a phone call.
Exactly. Yeah. Somebody will go, what do you mean you didn't say ours?
They're like,
course. Yeah.
My children. I love them all. You got to be, because they, and there's, clearly there's some terrific slopes. On the West Coast. I honestly haven't skied in the last probably 8 years. I'm just too busy.
Wow. I made a little pact. I've got 2 kids, and I made a little pact that I was going to ski every year from now until I no longer can. Because I took probably 15 years off skiing. And I've lived in Steamboat Springs, and I've, lived in Mount Ruapehu in New Zealand, and skied all around and skied all over the world, and, up at Robert Redford Sundance and Jackson Hole, and just at Taos, New Mexico. And
those are some good ones.
They're beautiful spots. Beautiful spots.
They're crazy.
I was in Los Angeles last March. February, March, I came over to America I've got friends from Texas, and they invited me to the Society of Texas Architects conference or whatever. So I went, I'm going, I'm going to go. And I had sort of 3 days where I was kind of just a free agent in Los Angeles, and I was hanging out with some friends, and I spent 2 of them skiing. And there's a little ski field in Los Angeles called Mount Baldy. I don't know if you've ever skied it. Yeah.
No, never have.
So it's a little clubby type field, but it's close. And for my first skiing in probably 15 years, I strapped on skis at the top of Mount Baldy and went, here we go. It wasn't my first. I'd actually done one other day in New Zealand at Papa with my daughter, who is 10. I'd done one day with her, but that was my first one after 15 years. And I'd had a knee replacement in that 15 years as well. Yeah. So it was like, and then, the next one was Mount Baldy, and a little icy and a little fast, but getting to the mountains to me is like being able to breathe. It's like I surf and stuff as well, but the mountains is where I breathe. So, and I see that in what you do. The mountains is where you breathe.
That's where I grew up. And that's, I'm alive when I'm at altitude. Again, I don't know why, but I just feel like that's magic up there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.
We will have another conversation, I'm sure.
I hope.
For sure, man. I'm looking forward to getting to Seattle when we get unlocked as well, which will be in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But I'll be in touch without a doubt.
Good.
It's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much. We'll post all your socials and all that kind of stuff. And I'm hoping to interview Jim, and because I love his work as well.
Terrific.
And also, if I can, I'm going to try and interview Phil, your gizmologist.
Oh, God, that'd be great.
I would love that. And maybe even with you and the two of you in part of the conversation would be, he can tell me what a naughty child you be asking for this stuff and he has to fix your mess or something.
Oh, he'll definitely get into that. Oh, there's no question.
I think it'd be really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that, Adrian.
Cool, man. Thank you so much for making time.
Thanks,
Take care.
Adrian.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for tuning into our conversation. I hope it left you both informed and inspired. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And please don't hesitate to share your design thoughts with me. It's always a joy to hear from you. If you're like me and crave a deeper dive into design thinking, coupled with a love for travel and adventure, consider one of my architectural adventures. Join me and some of my wonderful design friends and embark on a journey of a lifetime. Apply for an unforgettable design experience at adrianramsey.com. With our clients spanning the globe, I firmly believe behind every great project are great people. If you're a great person and seeking to turn your dream into a reality, I'd be honored to design your home with you. Why not join the ranks of our exceptional clients and let's make your heart sing? Reach out to me at studio@ardesignhouse.com. That's studio@ardesignhouse.com, and let's get a conversation going and make your heart sing.